then also I had a friend of mine kill himself
Mm.
because of being in a judicial committee. Something that happened with him and his wife, and then the elders came over and talked to him, and then his wife came home a couple days later after she had gone and found him dead at the house. He had killed himself because of that judicial committee, and that hurt really bad because he was a better he was one of those guys that he would light up a room anytime he would come into it. You know, he was a really awesome person. He was everybody's best friend.
Mm.
If you were to ever meet him, you know, he'd be your best friend. You could have a conversation with him, and then a year later he'd see you and be like, "Hey, so how's it going with that thing you were doing a year ago?" And I'm like, "Wow, how'd you remember that?"
Mm-hmm.
Like he was just a really genuine, awesome person, and to see somebody like that go to the steps to do that because of what was going on just really hurt me. So that year was a really strange year for me too, with all that going on. So I was really active in Spanish because I needed to just keep busy. I needed to, you know, after Bethel, I just needed to keep busy in the organization doing stuff. And I wasn't a pioneer, but I was still trying to do auxiliary whenever I could. And it was probably, I think it was 2 or 3 months into doing Spanish that I just really, the ministry is completely different going from English to Spanish. Growing up in English, you'll work a whole neighborhood without placing one magazine.
Mm-hmm.
In Spanish, you got to bring a box. Like I started grabbing a cardboard box from the literature department, just filling it with the Bible teach books and magazines because you're going to place that whole entire box of literature
Mm-hmm.
that day. Because no one in Spanish will slam a door in your face. You know, because in the Spanish culture, if somebody comes to your house to talk about the Bible, you better listen to them. That's how serious they take, you know, the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
So that really was uplifting. And that was the first time also, because we go to migrant farms and all that other stuff to get the literature distributed. And that was the first time I had a beer in service. These guys were cooking up tacos and stuff, and they're like, they wouldn't let us leave until we had a beer with them. I'm like, all right, I'll have a beer. All right. And that was cool. And girls, I was just like, oh man, we're gonna get in so much trouble for this. We're gonna get in so much trouble. I'm like, dude, that book was made by a guy holding the beer in one hand and pulling the lever with the other, pumping that book up.
Yeah, little
You know?
little do the publishers know about the drinking that the bindery workers do.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
So it's so funny. Like everyone always like anytime you do something little different, they're like, "We're gonna get in trouble. We're gonna get in trouble." I'm like, it'll be all right. Don't worry about it. And that was cool because I had had a short experience with foreign ministry just for like one day in Russian, and I had fortunately gone on a Bethel tour that year, and I grabbed all the Russian literature I saw. I don't know if they've translated the Russian. I don't know if they translated New World Translation into Russian yet or not. I've never seen a Russian Bible New World Translation because what they use is just the Holy Bible because it just says Holy Bible in Russian on it. So that's what they had. So I grabbed it and I grabbed a bunch of books. And it was actually during Brother Finley's circuit overseer visit when I was a pioneer still. And my cousin was like, hey, I found this house and this lady answered the door and she's Mongolian and all of her roommates there and everyone there speaks Russian. I'm like, score! I'm like, tell that story in front of Brother Finley. I'll be over in a second. And so I like go over there and I'm like, hey, tell him the story. And we were there after you meet for morning service. Then you meet back at noon again. And he's like, Isaac, here's your chance. And I'm like, I've got all my literature already right here. And so I went and we met with them and we arranged to meet them tomorrow or the next day to have a Bible study. And she was going to study with the girl, and I was going to study with this guy and the other Russian guys that were living in this apartment. And so I was going over my what I was going to use, and I'm like, I'm just going to start the require brochure. Is that what it's called? Yeah. What does God require of us?
Mm-hmm.
And so I had those in Russian, and we would read a paragraph. I'd read a paragraph. We'd just take turns. and he saw the Bible, and he grew up in Russia where they're really, I don't know if it was impossible to get a Bible or what, but he like wanted my Bible, and I'm like, yeah, sure, you can have it. And he's like, oh, okay, thank you so much. Like, he was in tears that I gave him this Bible. And then I gave them all the literature I had, because they didn't even let us do that Bible study until we sat down for borscht. He made a big old pot of borscht, and they had donuts out and everything. We had to eat before we could do the Bible study. That was the best experience I've had ever with in the ministry. Like, that was like I think that was my first Bible study I even had, because I never had one in English. And so I finally got this guy, and then they moved like the very next week. They were like, oh, they left a note on the door. They're like, oh, we moved. I'm like, oh, okay, so hopefully they'll find somebody. But before Spanish, that was the best experience I had. So Spanish is keeping me busy. I moved in with some friends that I had made while I was in the Spanish class, and then I moved out west to New Mexico. And then I kind of fell off the grid for a while when I was out there. I was still doing the firefighting, and then I had taken up side work too, doing electrical on a huge construction project in the south of the state. So I was commuting a lot. And then another year while I was there, I was doing wildfire. So I was traveling, and I made it to California a few times. And I actually was going to move there because of a girl who was a cousin of one of my friends. I had met her because I'd walked with her in his wedding up in Michigan, and I came to the Long Beach Assembly Hall, or it's not an assembly hall, but it's a building they rent with it's got the whales and the dolphins on the side.
Yeah, the convention center.
Yeah, I went to a Spanish assembly there, and I'd say Spanish assemblies, that is a treat if you've never been. if you grew up in English and you see there's only the one hot girl with 8 guys around her, and it's like, oh, who am I supposed to flirt with? Who am I supposed to meet if there's no girls? And then you go to Spanish, and then there's like 10 girls to 1 guy, but then 9 of those girls are 15, but they look 20. But I was kind of dating her anyway, so it didn't matter. But that was pretty cool. That was a neat assembly. I really wasn't even doing much. I had missed meetings probably for a year. I wasn't attending any meetings at all, just because I was so busy working. And
Isaac, I'd like to interject and ask you a question on this point, because I was just talking to somebody about this the other day, that the indoctrination that the witnesses give you, it's constant, 2 and 3 and 4 times a week. So when you're away for a while, that starts to dissipate. You start to think more for yourself. I mean, did you experience that, where you're not going to the meetings every day and all of a sudden you start to see things from a different viewpoint?
Yes, because what had actually also happened right when I had moved out there was my best friend who I grew up with, he had gotten disfellowshipped right when he had moved in with me. Like, he messed up with his girlfriend and stuff, and they both got disfellowshipped, and so I didn't have a roommate. So I was like, wow, what am I going to do now? And I was working so much that I just didn't have time. And then I really just kind of started to see, I didn't feel bad about missing the meetings. I didn't feel bad about not going out in service very often at all. But I would still, people would talk about religious stuff, and I'd be like, hey, so what do you think about this? And then they were like, where'd you hear that from? And I'm like, oh, just the Bible. And they're like, oh, you're one of them Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'm like, why do you say that? They're like, because you guys are the only ones that read the Bible. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. But yeah, you're right about the indoctrination thing, because I actually missed the memorial too 1 year, and I tried as hard as I could to go, and I just missed it. I couldn't go, and I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird feeling, but I was so far enough away from family and anybody I really knew that I didn't really have people bugging me like, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? And I mean, even that kind of stops after like the first couple weeks of you missing meetings. People just forget about you, you know, and not hearing it, not hearing the same thing over and over again, because that's really like now, because I still go to the meetings. You hear it, and it's like, man, this is the same exact Watchtower lesson they did like a month ago.
Wait. You're going to meetings right now?
Yeah.
I thought you were. Well, okay. We need to get to that part of the story, but for time, we need to speed it up just a little bit. So,
Right.
so you've moved out west. You haven't gone to meetings for almost off and on about a year.
Yep.
Did you start doing research, or did you just realize something's wrong with this group, or what happened at that point?
I mostly was so busy working and stuff. I didn't really do research. I just was kind of like, man, I wonder if I can just kind of fall off and just not really have to do much now at this point. But I started talking to an old friend of mine, and I ended up getting married, and I moved to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of had to get my act back together and everything. You know, I had to get back into the flow of things and get back to the meetings. And
so you married a witness?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, we were friends for a long time, and we'd always kept in touch, and ended up getting engaged after dating, and then getting married. And I decided to move here, and like right after I moved here, I couldn't get a job doing what I wanted, so I had actually seen an ad in the paper for the Coast Guard, and I was like, I'll do that. And I knew what it was. I knew everything that was involved in it, but I was just like, you know what? I really don't. I don't care. And it was right around that same time I started to do more research and stuff. And that's when I saw about the UN with the NGO thing, because I researched about Jehovah's Witnesses and government relations and things like that. And that's when I saw that about the UN. I'm like, what? I could not believe it. I wanted to email that to everybody I knew, but then I knew I'd get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because they'd be like, that's fake. Some apostate made that in his basement. And so I got in the Coast Guard. I started doing that, and nobody really said much of anything. And I was going to meetings. I was handling the mics, giving talks on the school. I had privileges.
Whoa. So the elders knew you were a member of, you were serving in the Coast Guard.
Yeah, so I was, actually the brother who did my wedding talk was the first one I told about it. And I'm like, well, I'm in the auxiliary, really, so I'm still technically a civilian. And the reason why I was able to kind of get in so easily with the active duty units and work with them was because I was a medic and stuff, and I was also bilingual. So I was able to get right in, but I wasn't really getting paid at all because I wasn't an active member of the units. And this is also the same time that the country was going through all those budget problems and stuff, so they couldn't really bring me on a paid basis yet as an active duty member. So the brothers knew because and other witnesses knew, but I think they just kind of never thought that the Coast Guard was part of the military at all. So it was that year, 4th of July. It was 2011. I was like, hey, come on down to the Coast Guard station. We're having a big thing and stuff. You guys can see the boats and blah, blah, blah. And a bunch of witnesses came, and they were like, oh, this is cool. And I'm like, yeah, pay no attention to that gun on the boat. We just use it to shoot ducks. and they're like, oh, okay. And so that was really strange. And then what happened? Oh, yeah. So it was, I would miss meetings for a little bit, then I'd go because I got hired in the hospital down here, working in the ER. And so I was doing that, and there was a girl who was like, she kind of figured out I was a witness just by, they figured it out. And she's like, hey, are you a witness? I'm like, yeah. She's like, oh, I stopped going a long time ago. I'm an apostate, so you don't want to talk to me. And I'm like, whatever. And I'm like, why are you an apostate? And so I start talking to her, and she starts telling me all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, you're crazy. I don't believe half of what you just said. And she told me about the UN thing, and I'm like, oh, so you know about that. And so then she starts telling me these other things, and I'm like, I need to do research on my own. I'm not gonna take your word for it. But I mean, you're an educated person, so I'm not gonna say everything you're saying is a lie either. So it was that one little thing, that little bird in my ear that first got me to start thinking. And then, still 2011, it was right around 2012 time that I got Ray Fran's book. I downloaded it, the e-copy, and I mean that thing, the Crisis Conscious. I wish I would have read that book when I was like 17, 16. Like I wouldn't have comprehended half the stuff because I still had to read the chapter on the generation like 3 times, and just because the doctrine of the generation is so hard for you to understand now. Even if you're an active JW, it's like impossible to like. You need like a map, a bulletin, to describe that doctrine. So I mean that thing. When I finished that book, I was just like, there is no way I can like live the rest of my life in this organization because I know it's all just phony. And there's a guy I met in the Coast Guard when I was working, and in the Coast Guard we have to salute the flag, we got to salute any dignitaries, anything like that. We salute each other, we salute superior officers, and having to salute the flag and stuff was kind of like it was a little like, there was a guy, he's like, hey, so what's up, man? And I'm like, oh, what do you mean? He's like, dude, you're like hesitating sometimes. And I'm like, I know. And he's like, are you a Jehovah's Witness? And I'm like, how'd you know? He's like, dude, I was like, my family was like super into it. We stopped going. And he's like, I know this other guy that works in intelligence who used to be a witness, and he's actually like wanting to like find somebody on the inside because of weird stuff that he's heard that's going on with child molesters and all that. And I'm like, I'm not even far enough in to even be a help. But it was funny, like after he said that, I'm like, man, there is somebody in the federal government that is interested on trying to find somebody on the inside to talk to. That really like, I was like, wow. And because beneath all their layers that they have of cover, there's a lot of things that they've been hiding with, their investments and everything like that. And, there's a lot of hypocritical things that if the general public were to know, the rank and file were to know, everything would just tumble. It would all just fall apart.
It would.
But people choose not to know it. And so it wasn't until about last year, I think early last year, the elders started to meet with me. And they were meeting, I think they met with me like 3 times before they were like, something's going to happen. The first time they met, because I was going to the meetings in my scrubs, I'd leave work and go in my scrubs, and I had my hospital badge on, and it had a little, the little pink ribbon, the pink breast cancer thing.
Yeah.
I had that. They talked to me about that before they even mentioned the Coast Guard.
Oh, yes. Jehovah's Witnesses are against breast cancer. I mean, they're against finding a cure for breast cancer.
Right. They said that I was putting faith in Satan's system, that that Satan's system could heal somebody and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, should I just quit my job and stop trying to heal people altogether and just let everybody die? I mean, that's pretty much what you're saying, and that's the mindset. That's the mindset, is to not even try. That's why none of them care. Yeah. Like, I was at the assembly this last weekend. I went to this. It was my last district convention I went to, and like, you can just see everybody there. They're like, oh, I don't care what I can eat this huge sandwich and bag of potato chips and Mountain Dew because I'll just be healthy in the new order. That's the attitude, is I can do what I want, and I don't care if all the fish in the ocean die. I don't care if everyone kills all the whales because, they'll all be back in the new order, so I'm not going to try to make the world a better place right now. And that's the attitude so many of them have that just has irritated me so much over the years. And so that was the thing they brought up was they're like, oh, you can't wear that. That's showing faith. Yeah, that's going to stumble somebody. And I'm like, whatever. And then they started mentioning me about the Coast Guard, about how it's a military service and blah, blah, blah. And I showed them my ID. Now my ID, I made copies of it while I was in. So I flip it out and it says non-military ID. Big letters on the back because I wasn't an active member. I was only a civilian auxiliary member. And I never handled a gun or anything the whole time I was in. And they were like, oh, if you showed that card to somebody, blah, 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 they could say, look, he's serving. And I'm like, no, it actually says non-military ID. Mm-hmm. Look at it. It says it right there. See, you got nothing. I'm not in the military. Mm-hmm. And they're like, brothers and sisters died because they wouldn't purchase a card. And I'm like, oh, you talking about Malawi? Yeah, let me tell you about Mexico. And so I told them about that. Oh, there's no proof of that. And I'm like, oh, if I could print out proof and show it to you, would you want to see it? They're like, where'd you get that from? I'm like, from an elder. You know? I was like, it's out there. And then they're like, oh, are you researching stuff not on? You can only use JWorg. And I'm like, there's a lot that's not on there. And then they didn't like that. And so then they had another meeting with me a couple months later because I was like, oh, I better dodge these guys for a while. Because the thing is like, if you're not ready, because what they hold in their hands is your social future. If you have friends, family, like they're going to cut all that off. And if you're not ready for that,
now,
you know, I mean,
Isaac, is it all right if I ask you a couple questions?
Yeah.
Okay, first question in my mind is you're starting to wake up. You have this coworker that's out and she's sharing this stuff. Did you go to your wife and share it with her? And how did she react to that? I mean, was she still like a real good JW girl? And was that causing you marital issues?
Breaking up a little bit.
I just said, did you go to your wife with this information? Was it causing you marital issues? Was she on board with you, or was she just wanting to be a good JW?
We were okay, and then I really hadn't. I would kind of like ask her certain things here and there, and then I mean, of course, after learning all this stuff, like. My spirituality kind of just, and then I had less interest in going in the ministry and all that other, you know, and giving comments. I'm like, why am I going to give a comment on this when it's just rubbish? Mm-hmm. And so she was seeing that, and then I was working a lot too, so I mean, she blamed it all on me not going to meetings and commenting. But she knows everything. She knows everything I know just recently within the last month. And it was very difficult. Just a couple of weeks ago, I actually typed up I pulled different chunks of letters I had seen online of disassociation letters, mm-hmm. and just kind of made up a draft of my own. And then it was so like soothing just to type that out, just mm-hmm. to see it.
Yeah.
Just to see it together. But yeah, when I learned it all, I just couldn't. Like, you don't want to believe what you're reading. You don't want to believe what you're seeing because you're told that there's there's nothing else. That there's no other way except through the JW organization, and then mm-hmm. to Christ, and then Jehovah. Like, mm-hmm. there's no other way. That's what you're told your whole life. And like, you hear little kids comment, like their little 2-word comments are "faithful and discreet slave," or "Jehovah's organization." You know, they say, and mm-hmm. I mean, you get a kid to say that over and over and over again.
It's mind control.
Yeah, it is. And you see that, like, in the Middle East, they do that with little kids, turn them into terrorists when they grow up. Mm-hmm. I'm not equating the two, but it's all the mind control. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it makes it so.
I'm still trying to figure out why are you still going to meetings at this point?
I haven't been able to break away because of my family that's in, and my wife, and like if I leave, I'm gonna have so many things happen. My life. I have to prepare. I've been trying to prepare my exit for a while, and it's tough. I mean, I was at the convention this last weekend, and I was like, man, this is gonna be my last one because it was ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can just tell they've tried to just make a whole new show of things now, and everyone's worshiping that little JWorg square, and I mean, that was another thing for me to just try to push me along, keep going, but it's like I can't get out right now. I have to
play the game.
I got to prepare myself for the exit.
Well, I mean, look,
yeah,
we're having an interview, and I mean, I'm assuming it's okay with you that I put this on YouTube.
Yeah.
So somebody could see it, right? And that could hasten the exit. But yeah, it's a big step, Isaac. I mean, I can tell that you're ready and that you're obviously very intelligent. You're articulate, but those ties go deep, and those emotional feelings for the Watchtower go deep. Because I mean, when you're raised around it, I know how that feels. And do you communicate with your family, your parents, very often? Are they still back in another part of the country, or are they where you're at now?
No, they're up north still, and they don't know anything about what and it's going to be a big shocker for them, and that's what the hard part is because I know I'm going to bring emotional distress upon a lot of my family, but it's like I don't feel like it should be something because like what I told my wife, it's like I'm not saying I don't believe in God anymore. I just don't believe that my only way to achieve happiness in life is through this organization. And I can't honestly sit at any of these meetings and believe, a lot of these people have good intentions. A lot of these people are good-hearted people and are nice. But from what I've experienced over the years, I've had friends commit suicide. I've just seen so much stuff happen that just goes against what we're taught in the Bible about what our lives should be like.
Or what we're told at the Kingdom Hall, that witnesses are the happiest people on earth, and this is the best way of life, and even if Armageddon wasn't going to come, I'd still live this way.
Right.
Like, give me a break.
Right. No, I mean, every single congregation, I've been in congregations all over the country, every corner of the country, and every one I've worked in or served in, there's always a pervert. There's always an elder's wife that's cheating with other elders' husbands, and there's always like something
weird.
And they're like, oh, it's just imperfect men. I'm like, well, there's imperfect men all over this place. It's systemic. It's not just a localized little problem. I mean, it's all over because we're all human, and you can't use imperfect human to judge other imperfect human by a Bible standard that is supposed to be perfect. It's just, I mean, it's all just like, I don't know how to describe it, but it just doesn't all fit well with how things should be like.
You just did describe it. You just did describe it. That's perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Anthony, what's his name? The governing body member.
Morris.
Anthony Morris.
The third.
The third. Yeah. Money. They were broadcasting it live from Atlanta. So whenever he would have a part, they tie it in. It would take them like 3 or 4 minutes, and then he would pop up on the big screen. He's so big. And he's on the big screen and on his part, and on his last part of the district convention this weekend, he says, and everyone's always like, boy, there sure are a lot of changes. Well, don't ask me, ask Jehovah. He's the one driving the chariot. What? A chariot? Like, a chariot doesn't do this. And then this, and then this, and then this, and this, and go like this for a little while, and then go, oh, go back to this. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. And then everyone just laughs, and it's like, oh yeah, that's the way it is. The chariot moves around. It's like, I feel sorry for a lot of them because a lot of them are never gonna just get out of. That's all they have. That's all they have. Like they can't leave it. And it's so strong. That's why I'm still here. It's just you can't. They're just sucked in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They have no choice. They got nowhere else to go. They got nothing else.
Yeah.
This is all they know.
Yeah, it's sad. And I can see, right now I can see on your face, Isaac, that this is a serious hurdle for you. But you know what? You have a huge support system. There's zillions of us out here online that have walked that walk and have traveled that arc that, you're at the beginning of it. I'm about 3 years along. Some people are 20 years along. But we all go through this walking away from falsehood and being true to ourselves. And, you can carry that through, that you have the integrity and you have the character to stand up and say, this is a bunch of baloney. I know it's a bunch of baloney, and I'm not going to play that game anymore. And it takes courage to do that. But the more people that do it, the more people are going to see and start leaving this fake religion, start leaving this fake organization, and hopefully escape in our lifetimes, escape. And this can just be this curious, strange little 20th century group that got started by Russell, and it fades into the background. So that can happen, and it starts with me, and it starts with you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like the activism behind it that you're a part of and everything. I just didn't know that it was so organized. It is organized. Mm-hmm. And there's so many people doing different things. And I've found out just within the last month that I had a cousin. Well, it was she's my cousin, and she's really active in the activism. And she got this fellowship for being an apostate a long time ago, and I never talked to her. And I recently got in touch with her, and then I found out I had an aunt too, an aunt I never met who was disfellowshipped when I was born. And I've been in contact with her, and she's been involved with the activism. And it's like, man, there's these people that were my family that I've never been in touch with until recently. And the first thing they ask is did you read Ray Fran's book? And I'm like, yeah, I read it. It was awesome.
Yay.
And it's so funny. It's man, if Ray, if he could have known, he did know, but it was if there was only some way that he could have, if he had the technology back when that book came out to just make a movie. And, well, you're making the movie, right? You're making the movie.
I want to. It's in my head.
Yeah.
I'm making a movie. I'm making it right now. Yeah.
Get it up.
Yeah.
Because even it's the mainstream is, they're not going to be able to stop it. Mm-hmm. And with the generation behind me now, my generation, and all these kids that are just on their phones all the time, they're not going to be able to stop they're not going to be able to stop the access to it now, because it's so easy now to get information. Back then, they could stop people from getting a book. Mm-hmm. But now, now it's easy to get anything. Now in 2 seconds, I can, know anything I want to at any part of the world. And so I think that's also going to help out with the message you have too, mm-hmm. the message we all have, and
right.
It's gonna undermine everything that they've tried to use to just keep in power. They just want the power of the, to keep control of.
Oh yeah, the people at the top of the pyramid don't want to give up that power and glory and control. Now, Isaac, let's get back on track. The important topic is you. We want to finish up this. I want to finish up this interview and ask you, in conclusion, do you feel good about giving the interview, and what are you going to do next?
Yeah, I felt great. I mean, because I've been watching all your interviews, and I've been watching a couple other videos, the video channels on YouTube,
Good.
and your videos. I hear the different experiences, and it's like everybody comes from a different, you know, different background, but we all run along the same parallel course, and then it's always a different part of that course where we find out about Tat,
Mm-hmm.
and then with me, it's just like I guess I was in the closet, you could say, and had to just
Mm-hmm.
and when I took the chains off and finally was able to like talk to another family member of mine about it who has felt the same way for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and I like was like, did you know this and this? And he's like, yeah, I knew this. I'm like, oh my god, dude, like, why didn't you tell me? He's like, I didn't want to tell you because I was scared what you would think. And I'm like, oh, okay,
Mm-hmm.
because that's how it is. You're afraid to,
They keep,
you
yeah,
got to kind
they keep us isolated.
yeah. And then when I finally was able to tell my wife, it was just kind of like, it was like all the weight off my shoulders. But I'm not finished. I have to, I mean, I don't know when you're going to post this, but I've got to eventually meet with the just mail him my letter,
Mm-hmm.
and tell him, because I mean I can't go to another assembly, or I'm not going in the ministry ever again.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Well, look, I mean, you've probably looked up the different opinions on this in the XJW community. Some people, they want to write the letter and then just leave on their terms, and that's good for them. Some of
Yeah.
us feel that if you write that letter, you're playing their game, and that's what they want you to do. You're making it easy for them. It's almost like the difference between they say, I want you to commit Harry Carey. I want you to kill yourself, fall on your sword for me to make this a clean exit for all involved. Um,
Right.
Personally, I preferred to go and face these fellows and just say, you know what? This is what I've learned. There's something seriously wrong here. And I knew they were going to disfellowship me. So
Right.
some feel that they shouldn't play by the rules the Watchtower has dictated and the legal department has dictated. Well, get them to sign a letter. The elders will push that letter. They'll say, well, just put something down in writing. They'll give you a pen. Click, click, click here. Just put something down in writing. See, that makes it
Right.
easy for them. They don't have to be the executioner. See,
Right.
you can just kill yourself. So, anyways, either way, what I want for Isaac is I want Isaac to get rid of some stress. I want you to de-stress yourself, my friend, because you don't need any more of that. So you do whatever's the easiest and the best for you. My choice when I left, I just simply quit going. I just dodged them and ducked them. And eventually they tracked me down and all of that. And a lot of people just said, look, you don't need to go to the meeting. And I've had friends that just said, I'm not going to your little meeting. And then they got DF'd in absentia. But again, the point is make them do the work. And what do you care? Because they have no power over you anymore. But the bottom line is they can keep the guilt and you can gain the freedom.
Right. Yeah, exactly, and it's a win-win. And I mean, I just have to wait for it to happen, and it's sad because I have friends, I have friends here,
Mm-hmm.
and I won't be able to see them again. I won't be able to help with babysitting their kids like I have been with my wife and things like that. And my wife has friends here, and now you know, she's gonna have to deal with that, and that's what the big
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes this so difficult.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Who's gonna provide for me spiritually?" And I'm like, "I'll still read the Bible with you. I don't want to stop. I
Mm-hmm.
just let's read the Bible.
Yeah,
How often?
you don't need the Watchtower.
Yeah." And I said that's been the problem this whole time is just all this other stuff that, and that's what makes it so difficult with the exit
Mm-hmm.
is because they can crucify your social life, and that's why people just stay zombies. They're because they're like, oh, I don't believe any of this, but I just can't I just can't leave because all my friends are here.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm willing to soon when I'm ready to sacrifice that if it means other people are gonna be like, he didn't do anything bad, and maybe it can open the eyes a little bit of some others, and that's what I'm just hoping for.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
because to live a life, I mean, I'll be 30 soon,
Mm-hmm.
and there's so much I want to do. Like,
yeah.
I've wanted to travel and help, do work like with the Peace Corps type thing, and do that, because I mean that's what brings me joy.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned stuff like that, and they're like, "Oh, but you could just be a missionary." I'm like, "I don't want to be a missionary. I don't."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's we're what's the word? We're pressured so much and discouraged so much from doing anything that's not, for the org.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what brings the stress on.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I was drinking a lot when I was drinking a lot, being stressed out about all of when I was heavily active in the organization. I was just stressed because it was like, man, I'm not doing as much as I can be. And you've got like an empty tank of gas driving to the Kingdom Hall and like $2 in your pocket for coffee or lunch, hoping somebody gives you gas money, and it's like, why am I living like this?
Yeah.
You're constantly stressed. And it's not how we should feel.
Yeah.
And it's just across the board, everyone feels like that. So I mean, and it's just going to be more.
I tell you what, let's make a deal. Either in 6 months from now or 1 year from now, let's have an update video. Okay?
Yeah.
Let's have an update video 6 months from now or a year from now, whichever is the right time. You tell me. And we'll revisit Isaac Bourne, and we will revisit, what happened and your triumphs and what you learned and your new perspective. And now you've got this, this new direction and all that. I think that would be fascinating, and I think it would be something to kind of keep in the back of our minds to strive for, because a lot of people leave and their lives don't get worse, it gets better.
Right.
I just did an interview, an update interview with Trevor and his wife Sarah, and they said that their marriage has never been better since they left the organization, because they don't have all those extra pressures and stresses upon them. So
exactly.
Things can get better. But Isaac, we're rooting for you. You have all the tools that you need. You're going to figure it out. You've got people to lean on. You can certainly call or text me anytime. I don't care. 24 hours a day. We'll talk and we'll revisit and find out how you took off, after you got out.
Yeah.
Sound like a plan?
Sounds great.
The order is rapidly fading, for the times they are a-changing.